Fellas, how are we doing? I hope you guys have been good while I've been at the store getting some milk and cigarettes. But to be completely honest, I've been hopelessly addicted to the league, but I think I've done everything I wanted to do, so I'm ready to hop back into the main game. One good thing about playing this league is that it forced me into revisiting some old content that I've already completed in the main game. Today I want to talk about one of them. This one being the Mage Training Arena. Recently, I did a little poll about what content you guys really didn't like, and MTA was by far the least popular of the three. It only got 14% of the vote, and I hate to say it, but out of the three options I gave you, I would be part of the 14% that doesn't despise MTA. Even though I do enjoy me some Tithe Farm every now and again, I've done MTA so many times that it hurts my brain. I've done the full collection log on the main game, I did it on my Ultimate Iron Man, I've done it on pretty much every single league, and I did it on a hardcore Iron Man that died. I figured now would be a good time to talk about it since there are a lot of people who pick the Mage Relic and the desert area, and they're now remembering just how tedious this place can be even with the boosted points per hour. When I did this collection log, I actually posted it on Twitter, and my advice then was, if you're going to do the MTA log, do the Alchemy Room first to avoid burnout, lol. And to be frank, this holds up. I've never really disliked any of the rooms here, except maybe the Alchemy Room, but I'll get into that in a little bit. MTA is notorious for being quite a grind, where obtaining all the rewards can take upwards of 60 hours. But to get the points required for these rewards, you'll need to tackle 4 different rooms offering you 4 different types of points, which are spent in combination with each other. To get points, you'll need to tackle the Telekinetic Theater offering you telekinetic points, the Creature Graveyard offering you graveyard points, the Enchanting Chamber offering you enchantment points, and the Alchemist Playground offering you alchemy points. You need to use specific spells in each room which will award you these points, which can then be spent in combination to purchase the rewards for this minigame. But again, I'll be more specific very soon, I promise. I think MTA is interesting to talk about because it's one of the very few minigames I would consider mandatory content. Now, of course, you're free to play the game any way you want, but to truly progress your account and work towards traditional goals like the achievement diaries, you'll actually want to pay a visit here for one specific reward: Bones to Peaches. Bones to Peaches requires 200 points from the Telekinetic and Graveyard rooms, 300 from the Alchemist Room, and 2,000 from the Enchantment Room. This will take you anywhere from 4 to 6 hours depending on how efficient you are with each room, but I would consider this mandatory because casting Bones to Peaches is actually a hard achievement diary requirement for the Lumbridge and Draenor section. Completing this diary will eventually let you use fairy rings without a Drayman staff, but that's only after completing the elite tier. This is a great quality of life thing, so it's pretty important to get done at least at some point. Outside of Bones to Peaches, if you're playing an Iron Man, I would also consider the Infinity Boots to be a mandatory unlock, as they will be your best in slot mage boots once you can upgrade them with the Eternal Crystal. The boots will take a slightly shorter amount, being anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, but I would highly recommend you just stick it out and get it done for at least these 2 unlocks. Outside of our 2 mandatory unlocks, there is plenty more you can get from here. Honestly, you could argue that getting a Master Wand is important for your Iron Man, since you can later upgrade it into a Kodai, but I think that one's more up to you simply because of the Ancient Ice Scepter existing. At MTA, you can get more than just Infinity Boots, you can get the full Infinity set. This set of armor sits tidily just above Mystic Robes, but below Aram's Robes. To me, this would mean that your time or money are better spent elsewhere, since you'll probably want to work towards upgrading to Virtus or Ancestral eventually, but that one's up to you. These robes are really cool and are actually great fashionscape. Another popular reward here is the Mage's Book. This is actually quite an okay offhand for Mage, and it's actually considered pretty good for a lot of pure accounts, since while it has no defense requirement. But overall, I would say the time investment to benefit is not quite worth it, at least for me personally. The total amount of points for all the rewards, as well as the potential profit you can expect from buying each reward and then selling it after completing the collection log, can be seen on screen now. I don't think you need to know all this, but it might be important if you want to plan your path through here. When I did MTA, personally, I bought all my rewards at the same time. So I definitely wanted to know how much everything was going to cost in one bunch. This is only because I typically tend to burn out on activities when I can buy rewards as soon as I can. I don't know why, it's just a personal thing, I guess. But with MTA, you'll need to know more than just how many points things cost. You'll actually need to know how many runes you need for each room. And lucky for us, the wiki actually has a really great breakdown on how many hours, as well as how many runes you'll need for each individual reward. So I'll just show you all that info on the screen now. Feel free to pause if you're curious about only getting 1 or 2 specific rewards, or if you're planning on buying them all. Here you can see the expected amount of runes required. If you do decide to do everything, my advice would be to pick up slightly more than the amount listed just to be safe. Okay, that's a basic rundown on the rewards, so let's talk about how you actually do each room. The first thing I should mention is that using RuneLite for this minigame is highly recommended solely for the Mage Training Arena plugin. This plugin does everything you'd want it to do, from solving the puzzle all the way to doing the counting that you'd have to do in your head. I highly recommend using this plugin if you plan on doing a large amount of MTA. But with the disclaimer out of the way, let's start with what I assume most people will find the most annoying in the long run, the Alchemy Room. For this room, you can maximize your points to GP by using a charged Bryophyta staff and having a Tome of Fire with at least one charge in it to save both nature and fire runes. But if you don't have either of these, just bring a staff of fire and nature runes. You'll constantly need to be aware of items changing and where to go next. You can't just spam Alch in here if you really want to get the most possible points. There are 8 cupboards in this room that you'll need to search in order to find items to Alch. 5 of these cupboards will contain items and 3 of them will be empty on any given rotation. And I know you're saying, oh, can't I just bring my own items and Alch them? Wouldn't that be so much faster? Brother, I wish. Each item in this room is unique to the minigame and will Alch for 1, 5, 8, 15, or a maximum of 30 coins, depending on which item the Guardians are requesting. If you're wondering which item is in demand, you have this slick overlay that will tell you the value of each item, and you should always be alching the 30 GP one. It's not a bad idea to alch any other item, even if it's not the 30 GP one when you're running between cupboards, but you should never actively be alching the less rewarding ones. In this room, every 42 seconds, the room will reset. This means that a new item will be requested and the location of said item will change. There are 8 possible locations for each item as seen in this image, so if you know where one is, you'll know where the rest are. The plugin I mentioned will automatically solve this for you once you find one item, so again, I highly recommend it. So what is the strategy for this room? Basically, all you need to do is always find the 30 GP item and alch as many as you can before the room resets. If you pull one item out at a time and alch it, you'll never waste the potential 30 GP on a room reset, and this can offer you upwards of 350 points per hour. This is very click intensive, and there is a bit more chill method, which is the one I did for a majority of the time. By finding the 30 GP item and then pulling 7 or 8 of them out of the cupboard, you can just sit there and click the alch. You don't have to constantly click the cupboard, get a new one, go back to the alch. You can just click the alch button and keep your mouse in one place. By doing this method, there is a chance you'll have an extra of the item when it's no longer worth 30 GP. So by doing this less click intensive method, you will get less points per hour. But okay, you've been alching items in this room, you've got coins in your inventory, but you don't have any points. Why is that? Well, alching items in this room isn't actually what gives you the points. It's depositing the coins you receive. These coins work in intervals of 100, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. So, for example, if you deposit 105 coins, you would get 1 point. And if you deposited 195 coins, you would also get 1 point. So it's always better to deposit at rounded intervals of 100, as the points don't carry over. So if your next deposit after your 195 coins was 5 coins, you would get 0 points. And with all this in mind, there is also a cap of 12,000 coins per deposit, so going over that will forfeit any additional points you would have earned. So it's always better to just deposit once you're around 10,000, as you'll get a very obnoxious warning as soon as you hit that threshold. And that's the Alch Room. I'll be using a very detailed post from Jetpack Griffin, which was sourced from the wiki, as well as a deleted post from Karnakara at the end of each section to give you some numbers on what you can expect per hour. In the Alchemy Room, you can expect to save about 5% of your total nature runes used. You will also get roughly 270 points per hour, unless you're doing the more click-intensive method. It will cost you roughly 3 nature runes per point. You will get 416 magic XP per point gained. This is the highest in the entire minigame. And you will gain roughly 112,000 XP per hour, which is pretty good. And with all these numbers in mind, this means to get all the rewards, you'd spend roughly 12 hours in total in the Alchemy Room. And that was the most annoying room in MTA, at least in my opinion. But next, let's talk about the fastest and easiest room, the Enchanter's Room. This room is so incredibly easy and fast, it's a nice change of pace from what we just went through. Gear-wise, I'd recommend you bring a few stamina potions, since the room is pretty big and you might be running around depending on which method you choose. I'd also recommend you bring a graceful set, as there will be portions where you're just kind of standing around enchanting. You'll also need the runes for your highest level enchant spell, so you'll always need cosmic runes, but the staff you bring will change based on your magic level. At level 7 magic, you'll need a water staff. At 27, you'll need an air staff. At 49, you'll need a fire staff. At 57, you'll need an earth staff. At level 68, which is the bare minimum I would recommend you do this room at, you'll need a mud staff for the dragonstone enchant. At 87, you'll need a lava staff for the onyx enchant. And at level 93 or higher, it doesn't actually matter which staff you bring because you'll be using the enchant Zenyte spell, which uses blood and soul runes. I personally wouldn't recommend this one because the cost might outweigh the extra point, so do this one at your own financial discretion. My personal recommendation is to just use the Onyx enchant if you can, because this will save you a good amount of money and still get you very good points per hour. The ideal method for this room would be to run to the bonus shape and enchant them one at a time as you gather them. A lot of people don't know this, but you actually get points in this room at this point, not actually for depositing them. Depositing the enchanted spheres actually just gives you the bonus runes and no extra points. But for those of you out there who are like me and want a more chill method, the way I did this is that I just went to one corner, gathered a full inventory, clicked to the middle where the deposit is, and let the enchant auto-cast. This is significantly slower, but requires much less input and actually lets you get a cup of coffee in between gathers. When I was doing my research for this episode, the wiki actually had a really good point. If you're casting level 1 enchant, it is very much worthwhile to run to the bonus shape as you'll get 48% extra points. But casting the Onyx enchant like I recommended will only offer you about 13% more points doing all the bonus shapes. So again, the choice is yours. In this room, you can also choose to pick up the dragon stones when they spawn and enchant them. Doing this will offer you double the base amount of points for any shape, so it's not a bad idea to pick these up and enchant them every time you see them. The Enchanter's Room has a lot of variety in points and XP per hour, depending on which spell you're using and which method you pick. But again, you'll save roughly 5% of the cosmic runes you're using. Doing the Onyx enchant, you'll get about 10,000 points per hour manually casting, or 5,400 auto casting. You'll get 9 XP per enchantment point, and get 95,000 XP per hour manually casting your enchants, or about 50,000 per hour auto casting. Doing the Sapphire enchant spell, which is the level 7 one, will give you 2,800 points per hour manual casting or 1,500 auto casting. You'll get 6 XP per enchantment point and gain 17,000 XP per hour with manual casting or about 10,000 with auto casting. This means it will take you roughly 3 hours manually casting the Onyx enchant or 5 hours of auto casting to get enough points for all the rewards. I'd really recommend you don't venture into this room until you can at least cast the Dragonstone enchant, as it's obviously so much slower if you do this at level 7. Next, let's move into another room that most people strongly dislike, the Graveyard Room. This room is very annoying, especially when you only have bones to bananas. In this room, you'll take constant chip damage and will have to occasionally eat the food that you're creating. When you start out, you can only make bananas. Bananas heal 2 HP. That is a lot of bananas when you need to heal up. There's no real way to sugarcoat it. This room sucks until you have bones to peaches. That's why I recommend, if you are doing this on an Ironman and planning on getting infinity boots, that you just slug it out and get bones to peaches first. Peaches are substantially better, healing 8 HP per peach, and make this room so much easier with less spam clicking on the bananas. And I know you thought of the loophole. You can just use the bones to peaches tabs without the spell unlocked. And I wish you could, but if you don't have the spell unlocked, the tabs don't work in here. So you'll have to stick it out with the regular bananas, at least at the start. For this room, you'll need any gear that will help you regen HP, so think the regen bracelet and the HP cape, but these won't really make that big of a difference and you'll have to eat bananas anyway. You'll also want prayer boosting equipment if you decide to use rapid heal. Again, like the regen items, this does not make that big of a difference, but you can do it. For this, you'll want to bring Proselyte, your best blessing, a god book, and the Lumbridge and Draenor achievement diary ring works really well. Outside of gear, you'll also need the runes for Bones to Peaches or Bones to Bananas. Both of these spells use the same runes, being Nature, Water, and Earth. They just use a different amount for each spell. So for this, you'll want to bring Nature runes and a Mud Battle Staff. If you don't have access to a Mud Battle Staff, you can just substitute it with a Tome of Water and an Earth Staff. But again, if you don't have either of those, you'll need to bring the runes that you're missing. In this room, your goal is to pick up bones, convert them to fruit, and deposit them in the chute. Very straightforward. The type of fruit you deposit doesn't actually affect your points, so you won't actually get more points when you get Bones to Peaches unlocked, but bones in the room have a value to them, which you can see in this overlay. These values correlate to how many fruits each bone will be converted into, so if your bone value is 16, you'll get 16 fruits. Unlike in the Alchemy Room, points actually roll over from previous deposits, so every 16 fruit you deposit here will give you 1 graveyard point. The idea here is to maximize the number of fruit you deposit in one go, as each cast will convert your whole inventory into bones. I would assume how I've done it is not the most optimal, but I would maximize my inventory space, use bones to bananas and deposit as many as I can, and repeat this until my HP was very low. Then I would convert and eat almost a full inventory of bananas, and then go back to step 1. The goal is to minimize how many trips you're doing, and also how many times you're casting the spell. You could also just start every MTA trip by doing some graveyard points until your HP was low and then hop into another room until you regain enough HP to feel like going back. But that would take considerably longer than just eating the bananas, and your points will not roll over once you leave the room. So at most, you'd miss out on 1 point every time, but it still doesn't seem worth it. In the graveyard room, you'll save about 22% of the nature runes you use, which is actually pretty great. It's about 330 points per hour. You'll gain 42 XP per graveyard point, and gain a whopping 14k magic XP per hour. Getting all the points required in the graveyard room will take you roughly 8 hours. And last but not least, we have the Telegrab Room. There's a lot of opinions about this room, but I actually don't hate it. I definitely liked it more than both the Alchemist Room and the Graveyard Room, so I'd consider it top 2. The Telekinetic Theater only has a handful of puzzle combinations, so you'll typically queue into which one you have and actually be able to solve it faster than the plugin updates. It's one of those rooms that you just kind of get into a nice flow, and you really aren't even thinking about what you're doing after a while. To do this room effectively, you'll definitely need some stamina potions as you'll be running a ton, and you'll also want Graceful just for the weight reduction. Outside of that, you'll need the runes required for Telegrab, which are just air and law runes, so bringing law runes and equipping a staff of air works really well here. In this room, your objective is to pull the statue through the maze ending on the base tile. Every time you complete a maze, you'll get 2 points, with a bonus 8 points for every 5th maze completed. This room is very straightforward. The only quirk is that the statue can only move north, south, east, or west, so you have to run around the maze to pull it in the direction you want it to move. There are a total of 10 different mazes, with the fastest taking 47 seconds and the slowest taking 76 seconds. So on average, you're completing a maze every minute or so. In this room, you'll save about 20% of the total law runes you use, gain an average of 185 points per hour, gain about 100 XP per point gained, and gain a whopping 18,000 magic XP per hour. So we've been talking about MTA for quite a while now, and this is normally where I'd put the twist in the video to tell you how to make it more enjoyable, but there's honestly no real good way to make MTA better. It is a very old piece of content that has been in the game forever, and my only real piece of advice is to do what you can do when you can do it. You don't have to go crazy and camp here till you get it all done. If you're feeling like doing some account progression today, go and do one room. Spend 2 hours and get the Alch Room points for Bones to Peaches, and then come back another day. Like everything in this game, it's a grind that doesn't need to be completed this second. There are so many things you can work on, and the only important thing is getting things done when you feel like it and when you're having fun. Don't skip a raid because you need telekinetic points. It will always be there. But if this is still something you want to do and you want some advice on where to start, honestly, the Graveyard Room is probably ideal so you can get that out of the way. The Enchanter's Room feels super fast because, well, it is. And the Telekinetic Room has a nice flow to it after a while. It's something you can genuinely enjoy doing if you like content like this. Any of these 3 would be ideal starting rooms so that you can get into the swing of it. But if you really want to set yourself up perfectly, do the Alchemist Room right now and then revisit MTA in 6 months. That room sucked the soul out of my body. Rewards wise, I would say your first purchase should be Bones to Peaches, especially if you're a main account, since that's really all you need from here. But it's also really nice if you're going back for more points. It will make your time in the Graveyard Room so much better. And that's MTA. I'm back. It feels good to make a video again. I'm kind of sad I didn't capitalize on the November-December ad revenue spike, so please consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below the video. I took a month off to play the league and I didn't make a single video on it. I kind of wish I made some progress videos for the league, but it didn't feel right, so maybe next time if that comes around, that's something I'll do. But it was nice to have just a break from everything. Thank you to the big fellas, DansSmeg'ead and LokiFM, as well as the fellas Snacks, Jujo, iTalk, and Halal Platter. I appreciate you guys for your continued support, and thank you so much for watching the whole video. It means a lot to me. But I've got nothing left to say, so I'll see you in the next one.